This is Note Taking Guide 2.8 from Math 1. So today we're going to learn how to graph inequalities and systems of inequalities. So we're going to start just by reminding you how to graph an inequality. One thing I want to remind you of before we even get started on is we need to look right here at the inequality sign. If it's missing the equal to underneath, we know that when we graph our line, it's going to be a dotted line. If it did have that equal to sign underneath there, when we graphed it, it would be a solid line. So just remember that we're looking to see if dotted or solid lines are going to be drawn according to whether or not that equal to sign is underneath the inequality. So this one is missing the equal to sign, which means we're going to have a dotted line when we graph it. So we're just going to graph this like it's a normal equation. This is actually in the form y equals mx plus b, where we have our y-intercept and we have our slope. We just have that inequality sign instead of the equal sign, but we're just going to graph it the exact same way. So my y-intercept is actually down at -1, so I come down to -1, and that's where I'm going to start my graph at, -1 on the y-axis. So remembering x-axis here, y-axis up and down here. From there, I'm going to follow my slope. My slope is 2. I always put that 1 underneath it to get my run. So my rise is 2, my run is 1. So from that point, I rise 2 and I run 1. I rise 2 and I run 1. I rise 2 and I run 1. And my line is going to go through those ordered pairs. Remembering though, we said this is going to be a dotted line because the equals to sign is missing. So just do the best you can. I know when I draw dotted lines, they're not anywhere close to straight, but just do the best you can. Then I just need to decide if I'm going to shade above this line or below this line. So I like to read my inequality this way. It says y's. My y's right here are greater than the line. So I like to go back and I like to look at my line and I like to say, well, are the y's greater than my line up here? Or are my y's greater than the line down here? Well, the y's actually get bigger up here on the top. They get smaller down here on the bottom. So they would be bigger up here on the top. So I would actually shade the y's that are bigger. So I'm going to shade above this line. Down here is not going to be shaded at all because that is where my y's get smaller. So that's a review of how to graph an inequality. Let's do one more review problem here and then we'll go on and do 2 of them on the same graph. Now this particular inequality is not in the form y equals mx plus b. You can see that because we have the x and the y right here on the same side together, x, y. We can't have that happen, so we actually need to solve this inequality for y so that it's ready to graph. So I'm just going to rewrite it over here. And then I'm going to solve it. So I need y by itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract the 3x over. Now remembering when I subtract that over, it's not going to combine with the other stuff. I'm just going to rewrite it. I'm going to rewrite it in front because I need it in that form y equals mx plus b. So I need that x value in the front there. Y is still not by itself, so I now have to get rid of the 6. I'm going to divide the 6 to both sides. I get y is less than or equal to -1 half x, and then 12 divided by 6 is 2. So this is what I'm going to graph this equation over here now that it's in that right form. So here's my y-intercept. It says start up at 2, so I'm going to start right there at 2. Then I'm going to follow my slope, which is down 1, right 2. So I go down 1, right 2, and put another dot. Down 1, right 2, put another dot, down 1, right 2. Gets you off the graph. This is actually going to be a solid line because of the equal sign. So do your best you can to draw your solid line. Oh, that was really bad. Your solid line. Hold on, let me see if I can do a better job than that. Draw my solid line through those ordered pairs. And then I have to decide if I'm going to be shading above or below that line. So again, I like to come over here and I like to read this. It says my y's are less than or equal to the line that's drawn. So are my y's less than, below, or less than above that line that I just drew? Well, they're actually less than below, so I'm actually going to shade below this line right here. So my actual solution is the shaded area down here. Okay, so again, that's a quick review of how to graph inequalities. So now we're going to do two inequalities on the same graph. Now, when I do this, I like to try and make it a little bit simpler by using arrows instead of shading right off the bat. And then my solution is always the overlapping part. So these two are already in the right form to graph, so we're just going to start. This one says start back here at 3 on the y-axis, so we're going to go to 3 there and draw a point. The number out in front of the x here is 1, so my slope is actually up 1 over 1. So from that point, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. I could go down 1 and over 1 also to get my slope the opposite direction. This is going to be a dotted line because there's no equal to signs. So we're going to do our dotted line through those ordered pairs. And then I have to decide if I'm shading above or below. So over here it says my y's are less than the line. So where they get less than is below. So I'm just going to draw these arrows that show that I'm going to be graphing below that line, shading below that line, so that I can decide where my end answer is going to be. Okay, this next line to graph is y is greater than or equal to 2. So I go on the y-axis, remembering that's the y-axis. I go up to 2 and I draw a point. Now, this is going to be a solid line through there because there's an equal to, so I'm going straight across solid here. Then I need to decide if I'm shading above or below the line. Well, it says my y's are greater than where I drew my line. So my y's actually get bigger above the line, so I'm shading this direction. So again, drawing my arrows of the direction I'm shading. Now if you look at this, you should be able to fairly easily see the overlap part of where we would be shading both lines. You can see that inside this area right here is where the overlap is. So my solution would be that kind of triangular piece over there. All right, let's go on to the next one. Okay, the first one is in slope y-intercept form, so it's ready to graph. The second one isn't, but let's just start with that first one and then we'll go from there. So we're going to start up at 4 and then we're going to follow our slope. Our slope is -2 over 3, so we go down 2, right 3, down 2, right 3, which takes me off the graph. It's going to be a dotted line because there's no equal to. And then I need to decide if I'm a shading above or below it. It says my y's are less than the line. The y's get less than below the line. So I'm going to be shading this direction. All right, the next one needs to be solved. So I'm going to rewrite it. I have a -2x plus 6y is greater than or equal to 6. I need to solve this for y. So the first thing I'm going to do is add that 2x over to the other side. Again, it's not going to combine together over there because they're not like terms. I'm just going to rewrite it with the x's in front, so it's in slope y-intercept form, and then just keep solving. So I got to get the 6 off of the y, so I'm dividing everything by 6. So I have y is greater than or equal to. I reduced the 2 over 6 on my calculator. It gives me 1/3. And then 6 divided by 6 is 1. So I'm going to graph this equation now. My y-intercept says start up at 1. So I'm starting here at 1. I follow my slope, which is up 1 and over 3. Up 1 and over 3, which takes me off my graph. So it's going to be a solid line this time because of the equal to sign. So I'm going to draw that solid line through those ordered pairs best I can. I missed it again. And then I'm going to shade. Again, it says my y's are greater than the line. So my y's get bigger above the line. So I'm up here. And again, my answer is the overlap. So I can see that I have to be below this line and above that line, which puts me in this triangular area for my overlap portion. And that's my solution set right there. Okay. All right, this is going backwards. So if you can see, my shaded area is here. So I've got to write two inequalities that will get me to this shaded area. So what I need to do is I need to just kind of look at what we're looking at here. So I know that I want to write my equations in y equals mx plus b form. That's my goal, to find the y-intercept and find the slope. So this first one right here, it has a y-intercept at 3. So I know I'm going to be plus 3. So then I just need to count the slope. So I'm going to find another spot where my graph goes through the corner of the coordinate plane. And I'm going to count my slope. I go down 1 and right 3. So down 1, right 3, that's going to be my slope. And then I can see that I shaded below that line, so my y's have to be less than that. And I get to throw the equal to sign on there because it was solid. Then I'm going to go do the same thing for the other one. The very first thing I need to do is find its y-intercept. Its y-intercept is 1. I shouldn't have put that plus sign right there though because it was -1. I need to make sure I get that sign in front of it. Then I'm going to follow my slope. My slope goes up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. So my slope is 1. And then I just need to decide if I shaded above or below it. I actually shaded below the line, so my y's are less than that line. And I don't get to put the equal to sign because it was dotted. So these are my two inequalities for that graph. All right, one more example of the same thing here. Again, you can see where your shaded region is. You can see that your shaded region is here. So we know we're trying to write our two inequalities that get us to that shaded region. So right here, here's my y-intercept. I know I'm going to be plus 3. Then I'm going to count my slope to my next spot that I feel like I go through the corner of the graph, and it might be all the way down here. So I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and over 2. So down 5 and over 2 for my slope. I need to decide if my y's were bigger than that or smaller than that. When I shaded, I actually went to the smaller y's. So my y's are less than -5/2 x plus 3. Then I just got to do the other one. The other one is a horizontal line at 2, so my y-intercept is a -2. It's actually at -2, sorry. My y's are shaded above that, so my y's are greater than. I get to put the equal to because it was a solid line, and that's my second equation. All right, that's how we graph systems of inequalities. Thanks for watching, you guys. Good luck with your homework.